seems like that people in this Bigfoot thing have been touched by something that really starts them, in many cases, to question things in general, and helps them to open up their eyes, to wake up essentially to a different reality, really. And we have this in common with each other, all of us that have these encounters and see these things. We all start to question a lot of things related to this topic, because it affects everything, not just Bigfoot in general. It affects your whole worldview. It starts to make everything shift. My name is Rich Jermeau. I've been involved in Bigfoot research since about 2008. I was previously in the Marine Corps Reserves and in law enforcement for 15 years. I left law enforcement in 2012. The first Bigfoot related incident that I had was I was a cop working in La Push, Washington in the year 2000. It was July. I was coming into work on the swing shift about 7 p.m. I was driving down onto the reservation, where I came around the corner at Second Beach on La Push Road, where you're coming down into the lower reservation, and there's kind of a straight stretch from that parking area where the trailhead to Second Beach is, where you head down towards Lonesome Creek, and there's a fish hatchery on the right and the Lonesome Creek store on the left. So I was coming down that road, and then as I got down it a little ways, about, I would say 75 yards in front of me, a very large figure stepped out of the brush on the ocean side, proceeded to cross the road in front of me, and it hit the fence line on the edge of the Lonesome Creek Fish Hatchery and disappeared into the salmon berries. I noticed, I'm a trained observer as a police officer, so obviously I'm paying attention. I know detail, and certain things are going to register with me, and first I wanted to identify what it was, because clearly it wasn't a human being, and it wasn't like any other animal I'd ever seen before. It was walking upright. It was big, tall. I'd say about 8 feet tall, 800 to 1,000 pounds, all one color, dark brown, black hair, and it had a very eloquent stride to it. Its gait, like how it walked, was clearly non-human. It was much more eloquent than a human, like humans would walk and their head would bob, and this thing was just very smooth, across the road. And it took like 4 steps to clear the entire roadway. If you were to go down there now, it's changed. They put a trail in on that side of the road, and it's more manicured than it is now, but then it was just brush all the way up to the edge of the road. And then right around the corner from that is the Lonesome Creek store, and then there's a road that goes along the beach, and people would surf down there and camp. Now they have a really nice campground area and cabins and stuff like that. But at that time it was unimproved. And there were a lot of people around. There were surfers down there. It was July, so people were out and about quite a bit. And so it was really odd that it was down there at that time. So I was shocked, essentially. I stopped my car in the road about 50 yards from where it disappeared. Seemed like a long time, but probably only several seconds to try to gather myself. I was still trying to categorize what it was, put it in the proper identification box, but I couldn't do it, because what I saw wasn't real, and I knew what it was, but it wasn't real, so I had a hard time with it really quickly. And then finally I just accepted. Obviously I just saw Bigfoot, and then I'm in shock. I'm excited. I felt safe because I was inside of a car, so I wasn't really scared. And then I just drove the rest of the way to the office, which was, less than a mile away from that spot. And then I pulled in. There was a county deputy there, and my sergeant Kevin Martin, and this other officer named Rick Lester. The deputy there was named Matt Murphy. He worked for Clallam County Sheriff's Office. So I walked in. They clearly saw I was shooken up or something because they asked me what happened to me. So it was all over my face, whatever it was. And I told them I just seen a Bigfoot at Lonesome Creek. And at first they kind of razzed me. But then after a little bit, they knew I was telling the truth. So they started asking me more questions, and we talked about it for a while. And they relayed a story to me that a couple of them had found some tracks a few months earlier up in the Clawa, which is the A road outside of Forks. I ended up writing a memo to the sheriff's office about the incident. Murphy told me to do that, so I did, and I put a CAD entry into our computer and explained the incident in full. One of the first things I started to feel like after the incident right away was I felt betrayed by my own government and the system that I lived under, because they didn't tell me about this. So I had to experience this trauma and to be all confused, and to be in a situation where I started having to question a lot of things, because if that was a lie, meaning that this thing was real and it wasn't supposed to be real. And if they hadn't told me about that, I started to think about what other things didn't they tell me about. So as my life went on after that point, I started to question a lot of things and to look into a lot of different things, and more or less just every sector of life and everything that I was doing. Like I started to, have a lot of questions about the entire system I was living under, and maybe a lot of things weren't true, and it was partially that incident, that had a lot to do with my shift or my mindset change, and, starting to question everything, really, more or less. It's actually at a spot that I used to research called the Little Dewattle River. After La Push, the incident there, I didn't get involved in any Bigfoot research. It wasn't until 8 years later. I mean, during that time, if somebody brought the topic up, I would pipe in and say, yeah, I saw one. And, people would laugh or chuckle a little bit, but at the same time, people believed me. I was credible, and I wasn't afraid to tell them that I thought that they were real based on what I had seen. And then, in 2008, I was involved, actually 2008, 9. I had issues at my work where I became a whistleblower. I ended up getting out of law enforcement as a result of that. I ran for sheriff so I could use that platform to expose some things to the public under the protections of a political campaign, because you can't get sued for anything you say in a political campaign. And so I was exposing some non-related Bigfoot stuff related to government and law enforcement throughout that campaign. And I was under a lot of stress because I was working full-time as a detective at that time too. And I had a hunting trip that I went on out in the West End, out in Forks, where some stuff happened that kind of ignited some stuff related to this, and kind of reignited it more or less, where I found what I thought were possible tracks, and had something follow me. And after I came back from that, we were hunting a lot of ridge lines that elk season. And I came up with the idea of the Olympic Project. This was November 11th, 2010.
And you were parked right here?
Right here, yeah. And as soon as I pulled in here that day, because I was out pulling campaign signs, because I had run for sheriff. I lost. November 11th is the day mandated by law that you have to pull your signs out, or else you can get fined. So I was driving around pulling campaign signs out. I just happened to pull in here, which was the only day that I ever came in here without a gun. So that may be or may not be significant, but I had no gun with me that day. As soon as I pulled into the spot, stopped the car, once I started opening the door, I started to get like an overwhelming feeling to just get back in the car and go home, to not even get out, like I shouldn't be here. And then it all kind of started from there, where as I started making my way up here that direction. I had one camera up there. I only planned on checking a couple because I wasn't really dressed for it. Checked one up there, and then after I checked that one, I found like an impression next to it, and I started to make my way towards the other one, where I had the sighting. But yeah, the whole time I was in there, I had this like feeling in me that seemed to be like unnatural. It was projected on me of like extreme terror, fear, dread, like time was standing still. It was really surreal that day anyways too. It was kind of overcast. It was really cold. Super quiet.
What did you have cameras here for?
I had like 5 in here for Bigfoot. Now across the street, that house, that driveway right there, I can't remember her name, but you could find out. She wrote a book about her experience here with Bigfoot at that house, and she's the reason why that we did start the Olympic project, was because of this, where I had just started hanging out with Derek, and we came to this site in 2008, where him, me, Cliff Barackman came here. We did call blasting. They had a bunch of stories about hearing vocalizations and different things out there. They had a couple of sightings of people that were renting this house. Like I said, she wrote a book about it. I can't remember her name. But
so you were one of the founding members of the Olympic project, right?
Yeah.
First generation.
Mm-hmm.
So back then it was you,
me and Derek initially, yeah, and then we invited a few other people, and Dave Ellis came in later. I met Derek through a mutual acquaintance, one of my wife's friends, and he called me. I told him my story. He kind of begged me to like get involved with research with him. And at that time he was in the BFRO, and so you know, after a period, it's actually an elk hunting trip, which at first I didn't want to do it, and this was like 8 years after I had my sighting in La Push. So at first I didn't want to do it, but then I changed my mind after I went on an elk hunting trip, and I found what seemed to be tracks off of the Bogoshiel River, and had another incident where I got kind of followed down after I had thought I shot an elk, and we were tracking it, and something else followed us all the way down to where, right before we got out on the road towards where my car was, and it broke a big branch right when we were about to leave. And after everything was really silent. So that kind of got me reinterested in the idea of maybe joining up with him. And so I came up with a camera trap project. We called it the Olympic Project, to put cameras in known travel routes, or at least what we suspected to be travel routes based on like historical sightings. And then we used topography to try to find the path of least resistance, essentially, where we thought these things would be migrating to get from point A to point B based on historical sighting records. And Derek liked the idea, so he said he would talk to Wally to see if he would finance it.
And that's Wally Hersom.
Yeah, so he bought us 50 cameras initially, and I mean, I had like 50 in my possession, at least, probably more at certain times. So I spent like a solid 4 years, like 20 to 30 hours a week, setting cameras and checking them. I mean, I hiked probably close to 1,000 miles, I figured, by myself, a lot of it, sometimes with other people. Brian Rasmussen was an initial guy from the Olympic Project, part of the original group, and he used to go with me quite a bit because he was an out-of-work iron worker at that time. So, and that was 2008, so we were in the financial crisis, and a lot of people were out of work, so he had time because he was laid off. And I would just take time off work, vacation or sick leave, or my days off. I was on 410s at that time, so I had a lot of time. And I was coming in here regularly. I didn't, after, initially, once those people left that house, Wally Hersom leased that house for 6 months, and they put Beth Heineken in it. You know who she is? She was in it, and they set up a surveillance system outside, and then they were trying to establish, you know, a habituation, and it didn't work. As soon as they moved in, everything quit. No more Bigfoot activity at all for that whole 6 months, essentially. So,
do you think it was because of the surveillance they put up?
Don't know. Maybe it was the intention. It's hard to say. But so once they vacated, I lived so close to here, I started coming back here by myself, and I put like 5 game cameras in here. Like the following spring, after they had vacated it. I came back several months later. And so it wasn't till I didn't find anything from like April until November. That day that I had the sighting here was the first evidence that I found again, and I found a track. So this is kind of like a strip that pretty much runs between like rural residential area where there's sporadic homes all over the place along this. And this goes all the way out to around and beyond Gerald's Cove to the Pickering Passage there. So it goes all the way to the beach where there's nothing in between. There's just timber strip, swamps, stuff like that. So yeah, we'll walk in here. So yeah, this is the way I come in every time.
And for those of you out there that have watched our Bigfoot Airbnb video on Down Mountain, we bring up the researcher who had stuff going on out there. That is Rich, and we're not going to go over that in this video because he's actually going to come with us to Down Mountain pretty soon.
I don't think I've been here for, it's been like 5 or 6 years since I've been here. So,
Since you've been here or Dow?
here. I don't think I've been to Dow. About the same time I went to Dow, I think, 5, 6 years ago. I was at Dow Creek like last winter in the late fall, like October, November. But I was down low by Kokanee Lake. I stayed at some people's houses that had a sighting down there in their backyard. I stayed at their house for a night. But you never know what you're going to find. They're probably in here right now. This is the time of year that they're here. They're like in here, they come in here in the fall, and then they kind of disappear out of here in the early spring. Okay. I think it's there. Oh, right here. Yeah, this is the spot. So I think I had a camera on that tree. And there was an impression kind of like right in here, but there was no pictures of anything on the camera. I don't know, remember if it was in direct line with the camera or not, but it was like there was a impression like right here, and the camera was like right here. So I seen that, and that got me pretty excited. So it was kind of overshadowing the strange state that I was in. And then I went from that camera back the direction we kind of came in, and then took a left right at that big maple tree. And we'll go down there in a second. When they started researching the site, and somehow they tracked down 10 different people from this island that had had sightings right in this road right down here, right in the main road, over like a 10-year span, right? 9 of them Bigfoot, 1 of them something else.
What was the other something else?
Like a dog man, but it's short. It was short. It was like 5 feet tall, and they said that it had a glimmeriness to the hair was sparse on it, and it had it kind of shimmered. The skin did. Pretty weird. It was one of the sightings was a medical doctor that lives on this island, and he saw 2 of them together that crossed. All nighttime sightings right in this road up here. So all coming into this area, right? And yeah, Derek found tracks up on top of the hill in the snow up here. They recovered hair samples off of some trees in the backyard of the house right up there, in accordance with the sighting that Henry Fehrenbach looked at and confirmed that it was Bigfoot hair, or at least consistent with the other suspected Bigfoot hair. So yeah, we can keep going. So yeah, this whole time I'm in here, I got a little excited there, but I'm starting to feel like really bad, like I shouldn't be here, like I'm in danger. As I made my way down through here, it was like it got more and more intense, like there was a weight on me. It was really, it's so hard to explain. I
felt that before.
Yeah, and it was like imminent. It felt like I was in like imminent danger, like I was gonna die. But it was so weird that I was like, oh, I can't pay attention to that. It makes no sense. I don't know where that's coming from. You know, it was super strange. Well, today's the 15-year anniversary of when this incident happened, to the day.
That's pretty cool.
It is, yeah. Maybe it's not anything.
And we didn't really plan that.
No, nobody. I didn't even know until after you said Tuesday. And I'm like, I looked at the date and I was like, oh, that's the 11th. That's the day. When I came down here after the incident, and even once or twice before, they were definitely in here. I heard them like jump down off of like something and take off running on 2 feet, but I didn't see them go through the brush and stuff right in this area right out here. Camera on this tree pointed back towards right here, and so I was going through on this camera and I had like a ring of 25 keys.
Did you hear that tapping?
There's something back there. I heard it move in the brush.
I saw something move here.
Something big. I heard something big right back here. There's a lot of deer in here.
I think I saw
I just heard tapping though.
This is all grown up a bunch more now than it was before. So you can't hardly see nothing. Not like before. But had a tree here, was going through the key, our camera on that tree was going through the keys. I was already like highly distressed and jumpy. So I was like scanning all around me. My instincts were like kicking in really strong, survival instincts for whatever reason. And I kept hearing what sounded like something like picking up twigs, like this, and breaking twigs. But it sounded pretty close, but it couldn't have been, because at that time I could see all the way through here. These trees were a lot smaller, and it was open where there's a creek over there. And then can't see into here, but I kept hearing that twig snapping as I'm going through these keys. It's dead quiet out here other than that, pretty much. And so it was making me like feel unsettled, like there was something out there to my right. And I would assumed it was like 75, 80 yards away over that way, but it sounded a lot closer. And so I'm going through these keys, kept feeling more and more like in danger, like my life was going to end, like time was standing still. Dread. And the keys get sticky because of corrosion and stuff in the locks, and so you have to wiggle them on each one to get them to engage, because if you try to force them, you can snap them off. So I'm doing that with all these keys, so it's taking a little bit of time. And then after I get about halfway through the keys, I hear that sound coming from over there. And it sounded close enough to like a deer snort that it kind of calmed me down for a second, because like, oh, it's a deer. Like I'm going to see it pretty soon. And I didn't though. And I keep going through the keys, and then I'd already decided that I wasn't going to go through the keys again. If I didn't get to the one that opened it, or if I missed it, I was going to just go and leave. I wasn't going to keep trying, because I was feeling that unsettled. And second to the last key, I turned it, and it worked. So I was like relieved. And then I'm going through the process of pulling the card. These are like the bigger, older reconnaissance cameras. They're the big square ones. And threw the new card in, getting it ready to arm, and all of a sudden, like directly in front of me from here, I hear this huge like exhale, groan, growl, like super deep, and it sounded like I could tell the emotion in it, like it was disgusted in me and irritated. Right, that's the way it felt. And it was right on top of me, right in front of me, and I didn't hear anything from this side at all. So I was totally shocked. I was so scared at that point that I did not even want to look up, because I knew it was that close. And I was like, I thought it would be the last thing that I ever saw. That was like the feeling in me. And I knew what it was already, because I knew what I was going to see, because we'd invested a bunch of time into here, cameras, had a lot of pictures of stuff. We never got pictures of a bear, only coyotes and deer. That was it, nothing else. And no sign of bear in here, nothing like that. So I knew what I was going to see, and sure enough, I started to lift my head up, and I was wearing a hat, so it was like 20 yards up there, about where those alders are that you see, those little ones. If you can move over this one, you can see better. See, there was a bigger alder there it fell down. It was up there, about where those were at. So right up there, basically, this thing is standing directly facing me. It's just standing there. and I start to lift up my hat, and it's just standing there static. I really got a good look at the legs, because I could see full view of it then. None of this crap was in the way, right? None of the bracken fern or anything was there. It was all a clear lane, essentially. So I had a full view of it, and it was standing up on a slightly elevated ground over there in a spot. So I could see it essentially from the feet up, and, you know, revealed the feet, the lower legs to the knees. You could see the hands were hanging down slightly below the knees. And I got to the shoulders that were just massive in relation to the height. I mean, it was like, if it was 8 feet plus tall, it was close to 5.5, 6 feet wide at the shoulders. Very V-shaped appearance, looking at it from the front. And once I got to about its chin, it ducked down really quick and got down in a squatting position facing me. And then right then it just shot. It like did like I would call it like a super speed shuffle, where it did this in front of me while in that squatting position. And it was totally silent, didn't make a noise. A twig didn't break, didn't hear grass, didn't hear nothing. Just like unnatural speed while it was facing me the whole time. I could see also it had sticks and like lichen and stuff sticking out from its back. They were poking up like they were stuck in its hair, and I could see it when it got down and squat and moved. That stuff was definitely attached to it, and it was going with it like camouflage. That had stuck sticks in its hair and its back, and it got out of view just over there to the left behind that cedar, and it was silent. And so I thought it was flanking me. And so I didn't think, my first instinct was to not come back the way I came, because that's the direction my car was at, and it went the same direction. So I just went straight out that way, up to the road, through the briars. There's a bunch of briars at the edge of the road. And got up on the road, started hyperventilating, heart palpitations, got to my car, broke down, like emotionally, and then I drove home. You know, got home, I was white as a ghost. My wife asked me what happened to me, and told her I just seen a Bigfoot at Harston Island. I called a bunch of people, was all freaked out, told them what happened, said I'm not doing this no more. I mean, it was like the scariest thing ever that I'd been through, literally, because it was built up to be that way. Like, that was the intention behind it, I think, to scare me, to like stop me from coming in here, because I was coming in here regularly. And this is not a very big area that they seem to cross through a lot. I came back here the next day with another guy, Rob Johnson, that was in the Olympic Project too, and we looked for evidence tracks. I found tracks over there, a whole bunch of them, where I was hearing the twigs breaking and stuff, but nothing up front of me here where I've seen it. The ground was really hard though, like clay, and not a lot of soft where it was at. So, but I found no evidence of where it had crawled up or moved into that area or nothing like that. I don't know how it got there. When I would come back here after this, I put up a baiting station right back here, where I put like a 5-gallon bucket where I put bacon in it and different food and stuff on this log. They didn't want nothing to do with it. They wouldn't take any of the food from me. But several times when I came in here, they were actually down here when I got down to this spot, and I heard them mimic dogs and bark at me like dogs, and it would set off other dogs in the area, but they were really close. I heard one right in there jump off. There's a spot in there that's like 6-7 feet off the ground. It's a root wad of a cedar that's kind of crooked. And I found a spot where I'm pretty sure they would stand on there because they could see, but I couldn't see them. They'd be up elevated like in a deer stand kind of, where they could see out through the brush and watch you come in. Well, I heard one when I was standing right here jump off of that, and a big thud, and then run off on bipedally, and then crash through the brush going back that way. When I was a detective at Mason County, before this incident happened, this would have been like 2008. I was working one morning, and we had a deputy who worked with the timber companies, like patrolling forest lands. And so he used to go to all the DNR meetings and different stuff like that every week. And he came in my office like at 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, because they had like an early meeting with DNR in Shelton, because Shelton's one of the big DNR hubs. And first they started the meeting related to a Bigfoot report that happened over like in Sultan on a county park or state park trail, where this old lady and her son basically encountered a face-to-face with what was like a female Sasquatch that growled at him, and they took off back to their car. Well, they called 911 and went to Snohomish County Dispatch. They kind of laughed her off, sort of, but then they referred her to DNR, where she called and left a message to DNR. The deputy gave me the number of the cop, the DNR cop that incident got assigned to. So I called him that day, and he said he hadn't gotten in contact with her yet, and he hadn't got access to the message yet that she left at DNR. So he said he would call me back later that afternoon. I ended up getting a hold of him later in the day, and he basically told me that the message she left on the DNR recorder got deleted, and there was no further contact. She was advised no further contact related to the supervisor. So I called Snohomish County 911 dispatch, and I said, yeah, can I get a copy of the 911 call, because they all are recorded? And they told me it had been deleted. It didn't exist anymore. So that happened. So another time, this same deputy came in, like this was the following New Year's, I think. This was before this incident happened. And he told me, I got a crazy story to tell you. So he's out on Hardstein Island, the south end of the island. It was like New Year's morning. And related to a trespassing complaint where a Mexican got dropped off by his friends down here somewhere. He lived somewhere close by that area, but they dropped him off like a mile away from his house in the middle of the night. So he starts walking home, and he said that it was pitch black, and he felt a pine cone hit him from the rear. And he stopped, and he turned around, and he had two more pine cones hit him, and he could hear something in the side of the road just up above him. And then he just was standing there, and he said two Bigfoots jumped out of the side of the road onto the road and started chasing him. So he ran down the road till he got to this big fence, and he climbed over this fence into this lady's backyard. She heard the noise, came out with a shotgun, and he was like in the fetal position, hiding like in the corner. Wouldn't say what happened. She called the cops, had him at gunpoint there. They came and showed up. He wouldn't talk. He was intoxicated. And they arrested him, and then they were going to write him a ticket and take him home. But he said he told the cop, I want to tell you what really happened. So he told him the story that two Bigfoots chased him, and he got into that woman's yard to get away from him. And he's a brush picker too. So he had worked at Hardstein, and he said that they all know about Hardstein Island and what's out here. And so that was a real story that happened. I tried to contact him, but he gave like a fake name and stuff. So I never was able to get in touch with that guy. It's an old outhouse that somebody had here probably in the 60s. But right on the other side of that, I had one of those 3-stick structures there that I would build when I'd come in here, and if it would get knocked over with the wind, I'd put it back up. It was right on the other side of that, by like 20 feet. So the same one I found in the road up on Great View Loop Road, yeah, I put one right over there, way before that. So I was coming home from work, swing shift from the North County, from north to south, and I'm coming down this road at about 1:50 a.m. And after I get past, this S curve here, we're gonna circle back around. And in my lane of travel, I noticed that up ahead of me there was a debris field in the road of like pieces of Scotch broom that were kind of shredded, like they'd been mowed. Were spread out in a circle, kind of like a snowflake, sort of. I mean, just a lot of it. And in the center of that was like a 5-foot square circle, like an eye of a hurricane, that was all clean. Nothing was in that area, except in the middle of it was a 3-stick teepee structure with a balance stick on top. And that's the same structure I would put at my research locations to try to establish some type of communication. So this is the corner I was coming around right here. And once I got to this spot right here, right up off of the sign, this thing was right in this area, this circle.
Wow.
Right here in front of me, it would have been. So I got out of my car. I was like shocked, because it couldn't have been what it obviously was, which was a direct communication to me. I couldn't accept that. So I got out and kicked it over, and I drove home, and I tried to kind of put it out of my mind and tried to not relate it to the whole experience overall. So yeah, the only way that could have happened is whatever did that knew I was going to be at that spot at that time. And even I didn't know that, because depending on where my last call was, because we work countywide a lot of times, I wouldn't know if I was going to be coming home from the north or the south, because this road intersects Highway 3, which runs north-south. So I wouldn't know that until the last 30 minutes of my shift, maybe. So I wouldn't have it planned on which way I was going to be coming home, but whatever put it there knew I was going to be there at that time. So this is my old house on Rochert Road. This is where I lived at the time when the Harstein incident happened about 15 years ago. Actually, to the day 15 years ago. This is the anniversary of it. So I was a deputy sheriff. I lived in this house from 2005 until 2013 or 2012. And after the Harstein incident, you know, a bunch of weird things happened. And two things at this house physically. Once, my wife called me. This was a few months after the incident, probably actually towards springtime. So it might have been like 5 months after, 6 months. Happened November, so yeah, about right. So she called me at work on the phone and said something really weird happened. Her and my daughter were in the front yard, and she said a couple rocks just kind of bounced next to her from nowhere. Like not really big, like golf ball size rocks, and she didn't know where they came from. Obviously you can see there's a lot of like brush around, so potentially, but they would have been in the front yard right over there, just sitting in it. So somewhere from this area, some rocks just happened to plop over. So I asked her a bunch of questions if somebody was like mowing a lawn around there, or, you know, some kids playing. Nope, nothing. But it's like they just fell out of the sky. So they probably got tossed from the woods here somewhere. And, you know, I really, at that point, wasn't ready to correlate that it was them. Because I'll show you after we leave here, if we drive to the end of this road, you can see the tip of Harstein Island, and it's actually only a mile or two from where this incident happened. And then right after that, I was coming home from swing shift. It was also spring, it was warm outside, and probably like at 1:55 to 2 o'clock in the morning. And I just pulled in my driveway, and immediately when I stepped out of my car, I got like a volume 10, like maximum volume, high-pitched Sasquatch scream that came from right here. And I was in the driveway right there when it happened. So, I mean, parked in front of that garage door. So that's how close it was. I mean, it was right on top of me. And so I basically just acted like it didn't happen and just walked right into the house and went inside. Spent a lot of time in the Hamma Hamma area, where I would set these cameras where in these suspected locations that I thought Sasquatch was going to be crossing through a spot, usually up over a saddle, over a ridge, or something like that, where there was like a pinch point. Because initially I thought that these things were probably like super rare, probably some sort of a undocumented hominid or something like that. I never really considered them being apes. They just seemed to be too smart for that. So I thought they were probably really rare. And it didn't take long until up in the Hamma Hamma, where I ended up getting an encounter with a camera of a Bigfoot, where I ended up swabbing that camera for DNA and sent it off to the Melba Ketchum, which ended up being the Sasquatch Genome Project, where I helped her get a lot of the funding for that project through Wally Hersom as well. I think he put about $500,000 into it. He paid for most of it. Adrian Erickson put in a large chunk of money into that too. But and then through that, I met Scott Carpenter, Dave Politis, and some other people. But I was also talking to Jeff Meldrum regularly at that time in the beginning of the Olympic Project, probably weekly. I was calling him at his office and discussing what I was finding and stuff like that, because I was out in the field like 20 to 30 hours plus a week, hiking and whatnot. So I moved where I live now in Jefferson County by Port Townsend, and on a big piece of family property. We're surrounded by timberland and public land, so we're kind of out there by ourselves. And I didn't do anything Bigfoot related for a long time, like 8-9 months. And then I wanted to see if I could call him there. So I started to do wood knocks, and several months went by and I got no response. And then one night I did. I used to go out about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night and do it right before dark and do like a same sequence of knocks, like 1 knock, 2 knocks, 1 knock, and then nothing else, and just see what happens. And then I did that, and then I started walking back to the house because I did it down the street, and then I got a return knock. So I knocked on another tree once. It did it again. I did it twice. It did it twice. I did it 3 times, and then nothing. So that excited me kind of. And then the next day I was outside, and about the same time, about the evening, about 7 o'clock, I got like 7 consecutive Ohio howls in a row, like really deep, long howls from right across the street from my house, like 100 yards away. And then a bunch of stuff happened over a period of time. A lot of different weird things, like hearing trees fall down that didn't really fall down, other stuff, hearing stuff walking around outside the house at night in the gravel. I found some impressions up behind the house. You know, with me, especially in this whole Bigfoot thing, it like I had talked about before, it really helped me to start seeing all of the inconsistencies in things and how things didn't really make sense. I'm talking about like the system we live under, you know, and that maybe a lot of other things may be hidden from us. And seems like that people in this Bigfoot thing have been touched by something that really starts them, in many cases, to question things in general, you know, and helps them to open up their eyes, to wake up essentially to a different reality, really. And, you know, we have this in common with each other, all of us that have these encounters and see these things. We all start to question a lot of things related to this topic because it affects everything, not just Bigfoot in general. It affects your whole worldview. It starts to make everything shift to where you start seeing holes in things and see that a lot of what we think we know may not be true, you know, and there may be a different reality out there, you know, different than what we had previously thought or what was being taught in school.